right? Economics is the key for a lot of this stuff to happen. And our next session, dealing with the economic development success stories from 2022, which is one of my favorite sessions that we do in this conference every year. We'll talk about that, the economics, the jobs, the success. It's not all alternative energy, it's energy efficiency. And so with that, if I know online we have Dennis Pruitt with the Missouri Partnership joining us. Here with us today is Terry Henderson from Toyota. If Terry can come on up. John Engelman from Evergy will be joining us online from Kansas City. And Rob Dixon from Ameren is coming on up as well. So I want to thank these presenters, and there's a lot of really interesting and exciting news on this panel from what happened last year. Maybe even some stuff that's going to come up, but this really does dovetail into energy policy, new technologies, and the successes that come out of direct relationships between utilities, contractors, and new technologies for improving businesses, efficiencies, which is probably one of the number one reasons that companies are targeting this sector, is how can they save costs on their manufacturing in their facilities. And so with that, I would like to hand the proverbial mic, over to Dennis Pruitt with the Missouri Partnership, who is joining us from Chicago.
Good morning. Josh, can you hear me okay? Josh?
You're good.
I'm good?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to present today. I'm in Chicago today. This is my Hampton Inn room, so this is not my typical work from home, but excited to be here and share some of the exciting news that we're seeing. If you can go to the next slide, please, Josh. The Missouri Partnership is a public-private economic development group. We were formed 14 years ago. We're a partnership between the Missouri Department of Economic Development and the Hawthorne Foundation. Our mission is to attract companies throughout the state, and we do that through our name, partnership. We really believe in that term. We believe that economic development is a team sport. We work with regional and local economic development organizations, utilities, rail, universities, state agencies, industry associations, and we're always looking for allies. So I'd appreciate your group's assistance in identifying and connecting me with energy companies that are growing. And we work a number of different sectors, not just energy related projects. We do manufacturing, food, distribution, financial services, data centers, geospatial, et cetera. But today, Josh asked me to speak about energy projects and trends, which I will, but I want to broaden that a little bit to include climate, which is closely related to energy. Next slide, please. These are some of the wins that we have seen in the past 12 months. And just real quickly, Astera, this is one that produces eco-friendly fertilizer. Ag tech foods can be a huge sector for us. It will continue to be. Circular, and that project went to St. Louis. Circular Syntech is a company that converts municipal solid waste and construction materials into renewable chemicals. That went to New Madrid. Verde Resources is a company that manufactures regenerative compost, and that's in LaBelle in Northeast Missouri. ICL is going to manufacture a lithium iron phosphate cathode material for lithium batteries. And I think you're going to hear about that later on today. That's in St. Louis. CoverCress is another ag tech company. They're working to develop a renewable fuel. Ford announced plans to build the e-Transit, and they're working on that project in the Claycomo near Kansas City. And then our friends Evergy and Ameren will get into details about their solar projects that they're developing throughout the state. Next slide, please. Real quickly, I want to go over some trends that we're seeing both domestically and internationally and how that's impacting projects. We're continuing to deal with COVID and how that's disrupted the supply chain, work from home. It's impacting our office projects. On the environmental side or energy side, we're seeing rising environmental awareness, a push towards sustainability and decarbonization. The Inflation Reduction Act with its domestic content is increasing our projects on batteries and solar projects related. The war in Ukraine is pushing European countries and companies to look at the United States because of the energy affordability and reliability. And then there's this trend of national security. It's related to, China, Russia, but also the supply chain from COVID. So we're hearing terms like, we used to hear reshoring, now we're hearing friendshoring, and how that's going to impact energy, specifically because 80% of battery solar materials are produced in China. And then that's being impacted by the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act and holding up some of the solar projects right now in the US. Specifically for site selection, what we're hearing from site selection consultants, these are people that advise companies on where to locate, a greater push or more questions about ESG and utility requirements. Specifically, they're looking for clean energy, however you want to define that, but it typically means not coal. We're looking at massive land requirements for battery gigafactories, and that's 2,000 to 3,000 acres. Okay, next slide, please. I'm sorry, the next one. Okay, yeah, here you see, this is a map of some of those massive battery projects that I talked about. You can see Missouri in green. We're surrounded by some really incredible projects that are happening around us. We're hoping to get some of those ourselves, but it does position us for some of the component suppliers. So for next slide, please. For energy, we're seeing oh, I'm sorry, that's not mine, I don't think. That's not my slide. There we go. So what we're seeing here for why Missouri would be good for some of these projects. For advanced manufacturing, we're seeing, the pun is intended here, but automotive is driving this, the transition to e-vehicles. A great company to watch is going to be Emerson with the work that they're doing on automation solutions and commercial residential solutions. That's going to be a real driver for energy and positions Missouri quite nicely as a energy transition state. Next slide, please. For ag tech, we're seeing huge increases in productivity in agriculture over the last 30 years, and that's due to the developments that are taking place right here in Missouri with our hardier crops that are drought and bug resistant, the sensors that we're developing for water and soil nutrients and satellite navigation. So, and I think eventually Monsanto will get a Nobel Prize. Probably not this generation, but a future generation will look back and say, look, this is what we needed. As we look at the potential for changes in the climate and energy efficiency and conserving water, this is really a big sector for us, and it is related to energy. It's all about climate smart agriculture and how the health of the soil. And we're doing a lot of great work here in precision agricultural, biotech, electronic controls, cover crops for carbon sequestration, conservation tillage, GPS, and yield maps. So we're seeing a lot going on there. And for the company side in Missouri, that's, Bunge is doing a corn sustainability program, Bayer with its short stature corn, Smithfield with renewable natural gas from animal waste. So we're seeing a lot of work there. Next slide, please. And then on energy solutions, for us, that means primarily battery and solar at this time. We did have a lot of wind projects back in 2008, 2009 with the investment tax credit. Those have expired or changed. But why are we seeing this? We have a great history of batteries in Missouri with the lead mines, and then now the lithium ion batteries. We have great companies. We had, we have that cobalt and rare earth metal supply, Doe Run, U.S. Strategic Metals, which used to be called Missouri Cobalt. We have a supportive governor, Missouri Department of Natural Resources, all helping out, engaged utility partners. We do have several active projects that are very big that are involving battery components and solar module production. Next slide, please. And then on logistics, I think I don't want to just talk about the traditional easy access to United States and North America, but I think the rail and barge applications are going to really help us out for future projects as we get more, as companies get more serious about reducing carbon emissions. The rail, shipping by rail is, sometimes different statistics. A source I found was, of course, from a rail company, but it said that rail freight produces 6 times less carbon dioxide than truck. So I think that we're going to see that as an opportunity for us. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the challenges that we're seeing in Missouri, and I don't think it's just Missouri, it's going to be national as well. So the battery supply chain is deficient at the cell level, whether it's lithium, nickel, magnesium, or graphite, and it takes too long to open up a mine. We have great mining resources in Missouri, but it takes about 10 years nationally to get those open and for process capacity. We need to figure out this relationship with China. We need to find sites for batteries. That's a challenge for us in Missouri. These 2,000 to 3,000 acres, it's just tough to pull those together. And we have vulnerable access to raw materials, whether it's nickel or lithium. And there's environmental impacts of battery production. It takes about 1 million gallons of water to process a ton of lithium. On solar, again, this is nationwide, but we're seeing local opposition is a big challenge, whether that's productive farmland taken out of production, aesthetics where you're damaging a view shed. Some of it might be irrational fears like catching on fire, or some miscellaneous concerns about, well, this is from China, it's built with forced labor, it's impacting bee pollination, it's killing birds. So for solar, there's some challenges there. On the whole green supply chain, where do we get these scarce metals? We're getting them from Congo, we're getting them from China, and the inflation has impacted the minerals that are going into electric vehicles. Those have soared by 139% over the past year, the minerals that are used in EV. We just, to reach some of these goals that have been set by the U.S. Department of Energy, we're going to really have to increase solar production by at least 10 times, critical mineral production by 500%. So we got a lot of challenges on reaching some of these goals, but they do offer great opportunities. So in conclusion, I think we're seeing this decarbonization is not a revolution, but an evolution. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of money. And you have to take into account the trade-offs. When people talk about clean energy, and they talk about wind turbines and EV batteries, I mean, really, there's a lot of heavy industry that's involved with the production of the wind turbines. You got 200 tons of steel for every megawatt, 15 tons of plastic resin for blades. You just can't decarbonize that, and you can't remove that out of the production as quickly as people would like to see. But we're continuing to see a lot of opportunities in energy related projects, ag tech. Kevin Gunn, I don't know if he's there or not, but from NextEra, but he gave me a great quote that renewable energy unlocks economic development. We believe that, we're seeing it. These battery plants are opportunities for us. These plants are 44 acres under roof. So you're going to need a lot of building materials, whether that's steel, concrete walls, roofing materials. We see opportunities in electronic recycling. We see opportunities in sustainable package. So maybe some of the agricultural residue can be used, the cotton waste, cornstarch, foam, hemp, for sustainable packaging, and then sustainable fabric, again, that ag residue. So in suggestions for closing here, I think we need to continue this coordination. We have a great relationship with our universities, our utility partners, in our industry associations. And how can we work more closely together? How can we collaborate with other states? We've got the Midwest EV Charging Corridor, the Midwest Climate Collaborative. So there's some models out there for us to work together. But I'm very optimistic. We have great projects in the pipeline. I think 2023 is going to be very active, and I will stop there and yield to my panelists. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. As Josh mentioned, I'm Terry Henderson, General Manager for Administration for Toyota Missouri. And with me today, I have Leah Omeling, who is our Regional Manager for Corporate Communications, and Travis Hartman, who's our Senior Manager for Environmental and Operations. They're really here today to answer any questions I get, hopefully. So thank you for having us here today. Today I'm going to give a closer view of Toyota's presence in North America and our approach to electrification in our vehicles, but also a closer look at Toyota Missouri and how we're approaching energy conservation. So one thing to tell you a little bit about Toyota Missouri, we are one of two casting operations that Toyota has in North America. We have our facility in Troy and then another plant in Jackson, Tennessee that we support here from Troy as well. Next slide. So an overview for Toyota in North America and what we look like. First, our philosophy is to design, build, and develop vehicles where we sell them. Our plant in Troy, Missouri is a good example of that philosophy, and it's been since 1992 when I joined the team there. Since then, Toyota has continued to grow its manufacturing presence in the US. We have 14 plants, including our joint venture with Mazda in Alabama, and our new battery plant that we announced in North Carolina. Over the past 50 years of manufacturing in North America, we have built over 42 million vehicles. Our commitment to build where we sell is demonstrated by the facts that 70% of the vehicles that are sold here in North America are built here in North America, and we use a 75% domestic purchased content for all those vehicles. Next slide. You can see from our operations map that our 14 plants are spread across Canada, the US, and Mexico. Our North American headquarters are located in Plano, Texas. We have a research and development facility in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and then our engineering team is headquartered in Georgetown, Kentucky. Of course, I mentioned earlier, our newest addition to the map is a lithium-ion battery manufacturing plant that'll be in North Carolina, which we announced last year. Next slide. So I'm proud to say that every Toyota or Lexus assembled in North America has a cylinder head that was made in Troy, Missouri. We say that the cylinder head is the lungs of an engine. They're key to controlling airflow in and out of the cylinders and controls the fuel deployment. Over the past 30 years in Troy, we've made more than 80 million castings for Toyota in North America. Our more than 1,000 team members at the Troy plant are proud to play such an integral part in Toyota's success in North America. Next slide. From Troy, we supply our 3 engine plant customers located in Alabama, West Virginia, and Kentucky. Here's a picture of one of the engines that we support, a V6 turbo engine, which you would find on a Toyota Tundra or a Toyota Sequoia. It has 2 cylinder heads within the engine. And as I mentioned earlier, our cylinder heads are the lungs of the engine, which allows air and gas to provide the combustion that creates the motion that drives the vehicle. This is why gas vehicle motors are referred to as internal combustion. Next slide. So I shared Toyota's impact in North America, so kind of looking at our impact here in Missouri. Since groundbreaking in 1991, the company has invested more than $564 million in our Troy operation, and we can produce more than 3 million cylinder heads a year. As I said earlier, all cylinder heads used in Toyota were produced with vehicles that came from Missouri. Toyota's operations in Missouri supports more than 4,000 direct jobs, those in our Troy plant, but also direct dealer jobs, and then Toyota dedicated supplier team members as well. Recently, we announced a $109 million investment for new generation 4-cylinder production that will be done in Troy as well. Next slide. So environmental sustainability is a key driver in our company's global strategy, and we consistently measure ourselves on it. Our commitment can be seen across our operations. Before I get into some specific examples from our plant here in Missouri, I want to talk a little bit about electrification. Next slide. Oops, next one. So we know the auto industry is moving toward an electrified future. Since we have many customers with many needs, we know one size does not fit all. That's why we believe the fastest way to carbon neutrality is to offer a portfolio of lower carbon to zero emission vehicles, including BEVs, battery electric vehicles, fuel cell electrics, hybrids, and plug-in hybrids. The consumer can choose which technology meets their needs as the industry begins its eventual transformation to electrification. Next slide. This year, we began adding BEVs back into our fleet. Of course, some people forget that in 1997, we introduced the first generation RAV4 electric vehicle. We were probably a little ahead of the consumer at that time. This year, we have a new BEV, the Toyota BZ4X, that arrived in the spring, and we announced a future BEV, the Lexus RZ450e. Next slide. So globally, we aim to expand our full lineup of electrified vehicles from 55 models that we have today to about 70 models by around 2025. Today, our electrified vehicles account for 25% of our total US sales. By 2030, we expect that number to go up to about 70% here in the US. To achieve a carbon neutral future, we need a team approach, industry and government, and focused on aligned to focus on consumer needs. Our cylinder heads produced here in Missouri will continue to play an essential role in Toyota's hybrid electric vehicle offerings. Carbon neutrality goes beyond vehicle emissions alone and involves all aspects of our operations: manufacturing, supply chain, dealers, and other partners. Next slide. In 2015, we established the Toyota Environmental Challenge 2050, which includes 6 challenges that go beyond eliminating environmental impacts to creating net positive impacts on the planet and society. The challenges include 3 on reducing the carbon emissions, 1 on conserving water, 1 on improving material waste, and 1 on protecting biodiversity. We are breaking the plan down into incremental 5-year action plans. This is how we will drive change step by step to achieve 0 CO2 emissions and a net positive environmental impact at a global level. Next slide. So we're leaving no stones unturned to have a net positive impact on the environment and society. Toyota remains focused on making its North American manufacturing plants carbon neutral by 2035, with the ultimate goal of realizing carbon neutrality across our global operations by 2050. Next slide. Of course, looking closer here in Missouri, so in 2017, Toyota announced a $17 million investment in Toyota, Missouri, which kicked off the initiative to switch all of our casting lines to Toyota's new global architecture. TNGA is what we refer to it. We continued that progress with a $62 million investment in 2019. And then I mentioned earlier the $109 million investment that we announced a few months ago. TNGA investments took place across our global operations, focused on structural innovations to optimize smart sharing and collaboration. Not only was our goal to produce ever better vehicles, but there were many positive environmental impacts as well. In Missouri, for example, we were able to begin transitioning to usage of an inorganic binder to control our manufacturing emissions. This change over time has allowed us to eliminate odor scrubbers while reducing emissions from our plant. Next slide. In our efforts to reduce our energy consumption and work toward our global goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2035, we also have made several changes to improve our energy efficiency. We are focused on 3 primary areas of our operation to achieve these savings, including our lighting, compressed air, and HVAC energy consumption. We are proud to partner with Ameren and their Biz Savers programs to assist us in making these changes. Since 2016, we replaced more than 200 fluorescent lamps and fixtures with more efficient alternatives. We also conducted an analysis of our compressed air system to identify leaks and correct inefficiencies. And finally, we established many new high-efficiency rooftop cooling units and variable frequency drives. In total, through these changes, Toyota Missouri has been able to reduce its energy use by over 4 million kilowatt hours per year. Next slide. In addition to our efforts to improve efficiency in our energy use, we are also doing our part to utilize renewables as a source of energy. We're investing in on and off-site solar and wind projects to lower our carbon footprint here in Missouri and around the country. At Toyota Missouri, we built a 3 solar array, which reduces our plant's CO2 emissions by 750 metric tons annually. That's enough to power 120 homes for a full year. As you've seen, Toyota is committed to contributing to the practical and sustainable development of society, and we are taking a transparent, science-based approach to address climate change across every part of our company, from our operations to our products, to grow in harmony with the environment. Thank you.
Well, if it's not one thing, it's another. The battery died, sorry. Next up, we have John Engelman from Evergy coming to us from Kansas City. John, take it away.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me. My computer is acting a little odd, so if it looks like I'm in a dark cave, I'm really not, but for whatever reason, it's not picking up much light. I'm John Engelman. I'm the manager of economic development here at Evergy. Next slide. Just a little bit about Evergy. We've got 1.6 million customers, about 5,000 or so employees, about 13,000 megawatts that we produce. And that, of course, is added to with other renewables and things that we are purchasing. You can see our footprint. We're mainly, western part of Missouri, eastern part of Kansas, primarily the Kansas City metro area, and Wichita being probably our larger metro areas. Next slide. Because we have been formed over time with mergers and acquisitions and whatnot, we actually are 4 separate service territories underneath the umbrella of Evergy. On the Kansas side, there's Kansas Central, which really takes into the Wichita and outstate Kansas. Evergy Metro, Kansas Metro is mainly like Johnson County, Wyandotte County, and Leavenworth and places like that. We have Missouri Metro, which is kind of what I'd call our core area in the downtown, as well as parts a little bit further east, like places like Salisbury. And then we have Missouri West, which used to be the old Aquila territory, which goes all the way up to the Iowa border and down to Nevada. Next slide. Okay, so I was asked a little bit about some of the economic development tools that we use, as well as to discuss some of the projects, the primary projects that worked on this year. We have utilized these tools effectively. We have looked at them and used them not haphazardly, but we use them as being part of the partnership that we have with the state and the local communities to try to grow the economy in the state of Missouri, as well as grow our load in the state of Missouri. The standard economic development rider, which we still have in our bucket of tools, is it's the tariff that allows anything over 200 kW with a load factor greater than 55%, and customer receiving incentives from state or local to receive a 20% discount over a 5-year period. The standard economic development rider is valuable because it allows us to work with those customers that perhaps are making large investments, employing a number of people, but maybe their load factor is not at 55%. This allows for some exemptions and allows us to be a part of the incentive package that's offered. So basically they get 1 year's worth of electricity over that 5-year period. The limited large economic development rider, which I believe Cameron will be speaking about, it's the same basic tool, but it does, for us, it ensures that the load factor of 55% or greater is met. There's no exemptions for CapEx or large employment, but that provides currently in our bucket still at about 40% discount each year for the 5-year period. That will be changing once we enact the new legislation next year. We have a special high load factor market rate tariff. This one, we have one that's effective as of April 2022 in our Evergy, Missouri West service territory. And currently we are before the Public Service Commission for a similar type of tariff in the Evergy, Missouri Metro. These tariffs were inspired, I guess, by us working with very large, very high load factor customers that were very interested in incorporating renewables into their requiring them to have a high percentage of renewables within their base load that they want to use. So the high load factor market rate tariff allows customers to procure their own renewables energy resources. It allows them to meet their corporate goals and secure the large load that they're needing. The energy costs are set by the SPP day ahead hourly rate at the, in the case of the Missouri West, at the Evergy Missouri West node. But the customer service charge and the capacity charge are based on incremental cost to serve and incorporate design risks. Those things are put in there so that providing this tariff rate to these larger customers does not impact the remaining customers within Evergy, Missouri West or Evergy, Missouri Metro. In order to qualify, they must have a monthly demand equal to or in excess of 100 megawatts to start, or they can be expected to be at 150 megawatts within a 5-year period. They must have a load factor of a minimum of 85% to qualify. They can be served at substation or transmission voltage. The term for the service term is 10 years, and the pricing term is set at 5 years. Then the rest of the tools that we have that we are asked about a lot are energy efficiency programs, which you're familiar with. Access to renewables is becoming a question more and more. And we do have anything as simple as providing RECs, buying RECs off the market and providing, selling those RECs to those customers or working to access renewable sources. And then finally, the revenue justification policy, which allows us to buy down needed infrastructure enhancements based on the net new revenue we're anticipating from this customer. You know, I put this one in there only because I know that there are some investor-owned utilities throughout the United States that have gone away from that. This is an important tool for us. It shows our continued partnership with the customers that we're trying to attract. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about recent successes. These are going to be inclusive of the Missouri and the Kansas side. Next slide. Okay, from just successes by industry, we counted 19 projects that I would say we're deeply involved with. We reply and we get involved with a lot of projects throughout the year. I think in 2022, we have started about 90 projects. That would include both new attraction projects that we get through the Missouri Partnership, the Kansas City Area Development Council, or the communities, and also expansion projects of our existing customers, and as well as projects that we receive directly from our existing customers. We had one large advanced energy success during the year, a couple of data centers, food processing, manufacturing. Those were, in terms of numbers, certainly were the highest that we had, as well as some logistics and office and life science. Next slide, please. But in terms of their impact, in terms of megawatt by industry, you can see the advanced energy and the data center projects were the ones that really brought a lot of, or will be bringing a lot of net new load to our customers, or our company. Next slide. So there were two large projects that we worked on this year. One is the Meta project that happened in Kansas City, Missouri, about 435 and I-169 highway, if you're familiar with that, pretty close to Smithville, Missouri. The initial contract we had was second quarter of 2018. So you can see that projects like this take a long time. It went through 2 or 3 code names before it finally got settled. And they looked at a variety of different sites throughout our service territory. And what they found was this area up at 435 and 169 where we had a dual 345 and 161 transmission substation. It's an $800 million CapEx. They were requesting 100% renewables. And that is part of the reason why this special high load factor market rate was created and approved. And they anticipate to be operational Q3 of 2023. Next slide. On the Kansas side, we actually had a project that was very quick. Initial contact with them, third quarter of 2021. DeSoto, Kansas, if you're not familiar, is on the western part of the metro area. It's on K10, which is the Kansas Highway 10 that goes to Lawrence, Kansas. $4 billion CapEx, 4,000 employees. Again, they're looking at being 100% renewable. On the Kansas side, we have special contract rate capability that's a little bit different on the Missouri side. So we're going through that method, and they should be operational Q3 2024. Next slide. Okay, that really, it's been a very fast year. I would say that the economic development tools that we have, the EDR, the energy efficiency, the renewables, all those things really allow us to be competitive when we're being looked at by companies that are looking at a variety of places all over the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, next up, Rob, you're ahead of the curve. That's fantastic.
All right, thank you. Well, good morning. It's great to be here with you today. My name is Rob Dixon. I lead the economic development team for Ameren, Missouri. And it's been a great morning here to hear a lot of the different components of how economic development really comes together with energy policy. And I think, you know, the two panels so far today, I always like to think of our work in economic development as the stuff that everyone else thinks just happened. So if you've ever driven down the highway going between St. Louis and Columbia, and you're heading west and you get to Jonesburg and you just look to your left, you see this big giant factory with CertainTeed just kind of comes up out of the ground seemingly. And you think to yourself, man, that's interesting. That's pretty cool that that just happened. Well, it didn't just happen, of course. It happened because public policy came together with economic development tools and resources, as well as supportive state, local, and other utility partners to come together to make that happen specifically there. And the story that I'd like to tell today is another one of those successes of things that seemingly just happened, is what we call our smart energy plan. And it's a result of really years of discussion in Jefferson City with our customers, with stakeholders all across the state. And it's really producing results for Missourians right now on both an economic development as well as a broader energy policy perspective. And so much like what you heard this morning, we're also having an active and successful year in economic development. And I wanted to touch on some of those success stories. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Just a little bit of a quick commercial on us. If you could advance the slide, please. Thank you. A very quick introduction. Ameren is our state's largest investor-owned utility. We serve both Ameren, Missouri and Ameren, Illinois. We have nearly 2.5 million electric customers and certainly have a broad perspective geographically in Missouri and in Illinois, basically all of Illinois south of Chicago and kind of the entire eastern half of the state of Missouri. And so that gives us a pretty good perspective of economic development opportunities and issues from your smallest rural areas of both states to obviously the largest metro areas in the Midwest. And so it's an active space, but the way that we really think about our role is not to just provide energy, but to be your energy partner. And in terms of an economic development opportunity, you really have to think about it as a partnership. The utility, the customer, the community, the state, all working together. And our smart energy plan, we believe, provides the tools for individual customers to succeed, but also really for our customers long-term to help achieve their goals. And certainly clean, reliable, affordable energy is at the core of all of that. Next slide, please. So just a very quick high level, and I'm not going to get into the full details of the smart energy plan, but at the highest level, it's really about modernizing the energy grid, helping our customers with additional benefits, and really focusing in on customer affordability. So we've got on our website, you could check it out. I know it might be hard to see down there, but ameren.com, check out our smart energy plan. The numbers and the results for 2022 are just about to be posted. We're really proud of that. But you could see over 500,000 smart meters, 837 smart switches have been added to the energy grid. That type of thing comes up in conversations when we're talking about potential economic development opportunities. Customers, large manufacturers, small organizations, whoever it is, they want to know how the grid works and how is the grid going to be reliable for them going forward. And because of the results of the smart energy plan, we're able to actually say absolutely yes, and we can walk through how that works. So the economic development impact of this, obviously, when you're talking about billions of dollars of infrastructure improvements to improve the energy grid overall, that in and of itself has economic benefits for our state. But we're also really proud of the fact that we do business not just in Missouri, but with Missouri. And so you can see that we've spent getting close to $500 million with Missouri suppliers on these projects, including $75 million with diverse suppliers. We're really proud of that. That's keeping our dollars local. That's reinvesting in Missouri businesses. That's helping drive the economy overall. And of course, at the core of all of that is customer affordability. So if you can go to the next slide, just a very quick overview of what we're talking about on energy on the grid improvements overall. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but the bottom line here is billions of dollars of infrastructure improvements to things like substations, making smart improvements to the grid, undergrounding, and including system hardening. So what does that do? Makes the grid more reliable, more resilient, shortens outages, shortens interruptions, those kind of things. All of that makes our state and our service territory a much more attractive place to do business and to attract additional jobs and investment. If you can go to the next slide, I'm going to drill down into a really important and specific topic that was a part of the Smart Energy Plan originally when it was passed, but also when it was just updated and approved last year in the General Assembly. And we truly thank the Governor, the General Assembly, Public Service Commission staff for all the input that went into this. But we feel like we had a great economic development tool before, and we just made it better. We call it the Economic Development Incentive. It's similar in a lot of the ways that my colleague John Engelman just talked about on the western side of our state. But talk about a little bit of what just happened with that. First off, our sunset for the program was extended. We improved and kind of expanded the way that the program itself works, which allows for more businesses of different sizes, different types of operations to access the program. And we included a longer period of time for the benefit period for the rate discount. And why is that important is because, as we'll talk about, we're seeing an increase in the size of these projects, the larger capital investments that are happening and we want to happen here. They have a different dynamic than maybe a smaller type of an enterprise. And what we wanted to do is to provide a flexible and adaptable tool that allows Missouri to be a really attractive place for economic development. So the program was designed into two tiers. And the first tier that you see right there is for a smaller type of a business to take advantage of it. 300 kilowatts to hit as the minimum demand, all the way up to basically 10 megawatts. We reduced the load factor requirement because coming out of the pandemic, because of workforce challenges, because of supply chain challenges, whatever it is, it's sometimes harder to meet those load factor requirements that were in the original program. So we were able to modify that, which is how we're able to provide, I think, a more flexible tool for a greater range of businesses. They're able to get up to a 35% discount on new load. What I really like to think about this program is it's called an incentive. It's an economic development incentive. And in terms of what we mean by that, as part of the economic development toolkit, we're trying to get something to happen here that otherwise wouldn't happen. So it's not just a discount program, but it's an incentive for investment and for jobs and for good things to happen in our communities here. And so that's how we think about this. So that tier one provides a 5-year benefit period for those eligible businesses. Tier two is a really new addition to this program. And what this allows us to do is for those really large capital intensive projects. And you'll see, we'll talk about it in just a bit here, but when I first started working in economic development, a large project might have been, you're really excited to work on a $50 to $100 million economic development project, capital investment by a business. Great project, really solid. Now, if it doesn't have a B in front of it, it's kind of like, well, gosh, what are we doing here? So the dynamics have really changed quite a bit across the entire country. And so those types of projects that are competitive, not just around the state, but literally around the world, if we're going to get them here, we need a new tool. And that's really what this project or this program does. So we have a new tier here with over 10 megawatts. And if you're able to qualify for that, you can get the benefit for a 10-year period of time, which again allows you to make it less expensive to do business in Missouri, which means our locations, our communities are going to be more attractive than, say, in other parts of the country or around the world. There's a variety of criteria that you have to meet to qualify for the program, of course. Check out the tariff sheet, check out our website for more details. But this is a program that's designed to work alongside state and local economic development programs. So it's not a discount program, like I said. If you're getting incentives for creating jobs, if you're getting incentives for investing capital in the state of Missouri, then this is a program that we would love to talk with you about. So if you can go to the next slide, talk a little bit about some of the success stories that we've had with it. And we're really, really proud of the results here. And just like John talked about on the western side, we're seeing similar results on our side. I can tell you it's a direct result of the Smart Energy Plan. And so if you can take just the top line there is the end of year from 2021, we had 28 business announcements that we worked on across our service territory. That helped generate $1 billion in capital investment in Missouri communities and in our state. and 3,500 new jobs in Missouri. This is what economic development is really all about. 3,500 people and their families are going to have more opportunities than they didn't before as a result of energy policy decisions that were made in Missouri. And I think that's a pretty dynamic story. And frankly, from a personal perspective, it's why I love doing this type of work. And so we're on a similar pace so far this year, although the types of projects that we're seeing have changed just a little bit. So far this year, we've had 21 projects announced, 21 new businesses or existing business expansions across our entire service territory. We think there might be a couple more before the end of the year, but of course, we're getting close to that moment. But you can see very similar results, larger projects, higher energy use this year than we've seen last year. Just like what you heard from Dennis at the start and what you heard from John, advanced manufacturing, food processing, agribusiness continue to be really dynamic and active industries in our service territory and across our state, which makes a lot of sense if you know anything about Missouri's economy. We make things that you move, and we make things that you eat. And so that's a lot of what we do here and a lot of the activity in these industries as well. You can see a couple of the well-known logos on the screen. James Hardie was one that was just announced by Governor Parson in October in Jefferson County. If you're not familiar with James Hardie, you might not have built a house or bought a house or live in a house or anything like that, because they make just about all of the building materials that go on residential homes and building construction materials, which is a very active industry for us. This is a nearly $300 million capital investment project, 250 jobs in Jefferson County. And right now that site is a grass field. And so from an economic development perspective, this is really one of those game-changing opportunities for that community, for our service territory. And they were really, or the economic development incentive, the EDI, energy discussions were really integral to their decision to locate here in Missouri. GM, obviously, Western Smokehouse and Swift Prepared Foods are two of our customers that are really active in food processing. Swift Prepared Foods actually has invested twice in the state of Missouri in the last couple of years. They put a food processing plant in Moberly and one in Columbia. And so it's a really dynamic industry for us. So again, half of our project pipeline that we call our project pipeline is in these industries. And over 73% of those announcements are using the economic development incentive tool, which for us tells us it's making a difference. It's driving decisions. It's providing additional benefits that are making our communities more attractive to investment. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to share this perspective here because if you're like most members of my family, you have literally no idea what I do every day in terms of what is economic development, what does it even mean? But at a really basic level, it's trying not to get eliminated from a competition for where those jobs and investment are going to happen. You saw previous speakers had some maps up on the screen. You saw these locations where jobs and investment were happening around the country. And the name of the game is to be the last place standing, basically. They're going through a checklist. They're going through an evaluation process. And these are some of the factors that we're being judged on. And it's not necessarily that they're all in sequential order. You have to win on everything, but it's it all goes into sort of the stew. And what I thought was really interesting, and this will get updated here shortly at the end of 2022, but 2 years in a row now, energy availability and costs are obviously number 3 on the list. And I don't see that changing. In fact, I would even see it potentially increasing in importance on the list. So what's the story here? If you want economic development, if you want economic development in your state, if you want jobs and capital investment in your community, we've got to continue to do the things that are going to ensure that our energy is available and that the costs are as affordable as possible. And not just affordable and available, but as we've heard a couple times already here today, that generated from the sources, of course, that customers are demanding around the world. So I like to say that prepared communities win, and you have to be ready today. And if you're not ready today, you're not going to get the call. So it's when these decisions happen, and you heard from John how quickly that Panasonic project happened. If they weren't ready when they knocked on their door, they weren't going to win. And a lot of what we're seeing right now is we have, in Missouri in particular, a challenge around sites. So dirt is not a site. You have to have a piece of real estate that is ready with the infrastructure, that has nearby access to workforce, that has all of these factors on the screen kind of baked into that. And if you're able to do that, then you're able to have really a good shot at some of these big projects. So these are some of the things that we're being judged on every single day. And the folks or the people that are judging us aren't looking at just what are you doing today, but what are your competitor states doing? What are your competitor countries doing? And so it's not just a matter of how are we doing here, but how are we doing relative to other possible locations around the country. So if you can go to the last slide here, I wanted to share this trend line that we're seeing. And so this is just the last couple of years. This is an average of all the projects that we have seen. So a lot of caveats before I get into it. Just bear with me for 1 second. This is showing the average size of economic development projects that we've been looking at. So not all of these are going to commit. Some of them we've already been notified that have chosen other locations. Some have come here. So this is just an average of everything that has come across our desk, so to speak. And what we've seen is a significant increase in the energy demand in a very short period of time. So over the last couple of years, 5 megawatts was the average size of the project. Coming out of the pandemic, what's changed? Public policy has changed. Federal funding has changed. The economy, the consumer demand has changed in a very short period of time. And we're seeing the results of this every single day now. We have projects that dwarf this average size in our pipeline right now that are looking to locate somewhere in America billions of dollars of opportunity, hundreds of megawatts of electric demand that they're looking at. And we have to continue to be aggressive. We have to continue to be thinking about energy policy and how it relates to economic development, because there's a lot at stake. And what's at stake truly is the economic opportunities all around us, jobs and investment, which could go somewhere else if we're not focused on these issues. So a lot of what's driving this is a lot of the discussion that we've already heard today. Electric vehicles, renewable energy, component manufacturing. They're looking for a very large footprint. They're looking for large buildings. They have high energy demands, and they increasingly want to see that energy being generated off of clean sources. So we've got our work cut out for us as an energy community in our state, but it's noble work, and I'm excited about Missouri's prospects going forward, because we've made those commitments. We honor our commitments here in Missouri, and we continue to drive on these issues. So that was my last slide. And I think, Josh, if I'm not mistaken, we'll do Q&A for the panel. All right, thank you.
Yes, we will. All right, join me in giving Rob a round of applause and thanking all of our speakers so far. So I hope it's obvious to see why this is my favorite, no offense to everyone else speaking, but my favorite session of the day. I get really energized to see the number of projects that are occurring in Missouri, their connection to the number of them that are connected to energy and the resources we have in Missouri. And I think that's great news. I would like to start, this is not a question, so it's kind of out of left field, but not necessarily, with a question specifically for Rob and Dennis, but I know John also participated in it, is a number of years ago, while you were at DED, you undertook a total revamp of the economic mission and drive of the state. I personally see a lot of connection between what the three of you spoke about and even what Toyota's doing with the plan that you put together. I was wondering if you guys could talk just a little bit about how you're seeing that plan come to fruition with all the projects come through today and tomorrow.
So I might, Dennis, if it's okay, I might just touch on a little bit of background on it. So the previous role, I served as the director of the Missouri Department of Economic Development and led Governor Parsons' economic development strategy for the state. One of the things that we really tried to do was to reset our entire approach to economic development. We had an initiative that we called the Best in the Midwest, and that was our aspiration to really rethink how we approached economic development in Missouri, because candidly, we had started to fall behind other states around us. And it broke my heart to see Dennis's map when Kansas in particular, sorry, John, gets those projects. But really what we had to do is to think about economic development in a way that we had in a long time for our state. So workforce development policy, infrastructure, how we were funding it, how we were making those investments. We had to really, frankly, keep up with where the economy and society and business had gone over that last decade. And so that was a lot of what we did. And I'm not going to kind of rehash all of the details on it, but Governor Parson was really focused on making changes in law, making changes in program, making changes in budget and funding in a way that focused on workforce and infrastructure. If you've heard Governor Parson ever talk, that's what he talks about, because that's what we needed to do. So for us, I can tell you, since I've taken on the role at Ameren over the last year, we're seeing the results of that come through. And what I mean by that is there's renewed focus on the things that are driving capital investment and business decisions on that list. So because of changes in infrastructure policy, because of changes in workforce development policy, we're having more looks, we're seeing more activity. There's a lot happening right now. And I think it's something that has really helped improve our competitiveness as a state.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that those structural changes were necessary. Business doesn't want to hear about bureaucracy. They want to see results. They want to see speed. And our programs were a bit disjointed. The communication was a bit disjointed. And you know, whether Rob was here or not, I would give him credit for that. He really steamrolled a lot of those changes that needed to take place. I do want to clarify, and I don't think this was what Rob was saying, but you know, those structural changes happened in the past. We are continually involved in planning every year. Things have changed so much since that plan was implemented. That was pre-COVID. You know, the governor's team had a response group that was formed. We did what we called microcells. We identified some from potential during COVID, post-COVID, and you know, we're really seeing some huge changes in the industry. And we do need to do some type. We are internally doing planning and figuring out what are the best business development sectors for us, where we're seeing the most activity. So while that was a big structural rehaul of DED and how the government works with companies, we are every day reevaluating what's going on the field and seeing how we can adjust. We pick up, you know, I was in a conversation at Ameren's headquarters, and you know, because of that conversation, I jumped on an airplane 2 weeks later and went to RE+, which was not on my calendar. But those things have to happen. We have to be nimble. We have to respond to what our utility companies, what our rail companies, what our companies are telling us are important to them, and then have a solid plan, but be really willing to change it, which I think we do.
I'd also like to just give a quick shout out to the partnership for their investment in a program. I think they call it the Raise the Bar program, which is an effort to identify large sites, make sure that those community partners that have large sites are really prepared to answer the questions that the site consultants come and ask just as quickly as they can. And it has been a really good exercise for communities in my service territory that, you know, they have to put this work up front, but it pays back so much. And you know, Rob had mentioned that quickness of the Panasonic thing on the Kansas side. They kind of had done something similar. So it does pay off, and we're really glad to partner with the partnership on getting our communities ready for the next thing.
Great, thank you all very much. Are there any questions from the audience? Do we have any online? Oh, yes, Bryce.
My question is for Terry here. Obviously, you mentioned that the parts made in Troy, Missouri are crucial not just for internal combustion vehicles, but hybrids as well. I'm curious though, you know, with the automotive industry veering toward an electric future, you know, how many years do you sort of, you know, expect that role to be you know, the dominant purpose, I guess, of the Troy plant? And is there a point at which you anticipate it might shift toward components for electric vehicles instead of internal combustion ones?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I tend to get that question about every other week when we're doing meet and greet with new team members. You know, they know we're an engine supplier. So one of the things that Toyota's done in our facility in Troy, we will have over the last 6 or 7 years completely retooled our plant. We have one old casting line that's still in place. It ends in next November. And really at that point, that becomes our selling point for future products from a space standpoint only. Actually, we've already started with partnering with the 3 engine plants as well, along with our casting plant in Tennessee, to look at what our future parts that we can produce in Troy will be. One of the things that Toyota's looking at is we've got these locations across North America, and what's that future going to look like? You know, the vehicle plants will continue to assemble something, but as you look at the engine plants and the parts plants that we are, you know, what will replace it? So for us, we've got a North American team that's looking at the electrification, kind of accelerating that activity. When you look at the amount of aluminum that's going into vehicles, that's going to continue to rise for the next 10 years, 15 years, as far as you know. And so that's what we're saying right now is we have the capabilities and skills of our team members to make whatever casting can be made. And so that's our selling point in the next 6 or 7 years as we have space that becomes available. As some of those products will slowly go away, our expectation is that we will replace that with some sort of new generation part. What it may be, we don't know that yet. It's really just in the beginning phases. Travis, who's with me here today, has been engaged with that team as well. So I tell team members I've been there 30 years. When I drive by the plant for the next 30 years, I want to see us still making whatever it is, but that's our objective. So for us, we're selling our capability and our team member skills to secure that future work.
Great, thank you. Any other questions here? Yes.
My question's for Terry as well. Toyota, I'm impressed with, you know, what you commented on, excuse me, relative to, you know, your goals of meeting, you know, carbon, you know, goals that go beyond just your product that touches on manufacturing. One of the things that Toyota has been really, I think, really good at has been operational efficiency. TPS has been recognized worldwide for efficiency, which helps you meet your goals for energy reduction. My question is, Toyota has filtered that down to your tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers. Do you intend to do the same thing with your energy initiatives as you did with your efficiency initiatives?
I think as we look at we do a lot with suppliers. We have a couple of organizations within the company that supports all of the suppliers that we have. A lot of it has to do from the procurement side, but there's also an internal Toyota production system group called the Organization Management Development Division that provides on-site support to suppliers that need it. We also do it from a human resources side, which I'm mostly involved in supplier support. Yeah, I think anything that we can do to support our supply base to make sure that they're stronger, they're viable, they're with us in the future, that we're doing that. I don't know, we do at least, well, you know, not counting the last few years with COVID, but those North American supplier meetings are key because we're only as strong as they are. And so our aluminum supplier is next door to us in Troy. So we get engaged with them on what we're doing from our energy support and what they can continue to do to be a good partner for us. So we think that's key to our long-term success is making sure we have a strong supply base. And we do that through our help, through engineering support, whatever assistance we can provide.
Great. I do want to state, if I haven't already, for those of you online, please use the chat component or the Q&A button to send us your questions. We'll make sure they get answered. I have one last question, and then we will close this session up. And this is for everybody. Can you give us one thing that you think, while you gave us all really great news, what is one thing that you'd like to see in the next year or two happen that you think that will make that next year better? Increase the number of opportunities, make the opportunities better, bigger. And we'll start with Dennis.
Well, I'm working on some very big projects that I don't think our existing incentives reward adequately. And I really think we're gonna have to look at some special legislation on these mega projects if we're going to compete. I have to be very careful how I say this, but we're dealing with companies that are looking at other states and they're getting, billions of, they're making billions of dollars of investment. They're creating 2,000, 4,000 jobs. We need some special tool to reward that type of investment. And I just don't think we're at that scale right now to compete against a Tennessee, an Alabama, a Georgia, where some of these Nevada, where some of these big projects are going. So we're trying to control what we can control, which is finding and identifying those sites, which is a critical first step. But then the second step is going to be, how do we convince a company? Now, I'm not all for incentives. I don't think that should be driving the decision. But if we're going to be the last 8 standing, we're going to have to look at that a little closer to see how we can be a bit more competitive to reward mega projects of this scale, because we're consistently breaking our records on capital investment, job creation projects. Rob showed a great slide on energy demand going up. We're going to see the same thing. We are seeing the same thing on job creation numbers going up, capital investment going up. It's, when we first started, that CertainT project that Rob referenced, that was our biggest project at 100 million. We've had 800 million. We've got $1 billion project right now. We have, that scale is going to continue, and our incentives aren't quite at that level that we need to be to compete effectively with other states.
Thanks, Dennis. Terry, for Toyota and your local shops, what do you think you need to make next year better or the year after?
Availability of skilled labor, skilled trades. Fortunately for us in Lincoln County, Rankin just built a new facility out there. We're going to do a lot of internal training and recruitment for students going into school. Just the availability of skilled labor. As our automation has grown, the need and the demand for team members that can fix equipment, and everybody has this issue. So that's my one Christmas wish.
That's great. John.
Well, I kind of go along with Dennis's theme. I guess if I had to come up with one thing, it would be for internally at Evergy, if we were able to crack the nut with regards to capacity and needing large loads in such a fast timeline. I don't know exactly what that answer is. And I'll temper that with the fact that I retire in about 5 days. So somebody's going to have to figure that out.
Passing the buck. I understand. All right. Rob, you want to close this out?
I think we've got to stop thinking about these as individual transactions and thinking 5, 10, 15 years ahead, which, as you heard in the legislative discussion earlier, that sausage making does not line up all the time with that type of kind of longer term strategic thinking. But we can continue to sort of be behind the curve, or we can start to be a really attractive location if we're thinking, how are we going to handle energy needs? How are we going to handle workforce needs? How are we going to handle infrastructure needs? Not just like today and these deals that are coming across our desk today and tomorrow, but literally, how do we keep up with these things into the next, decade ahead? And so for me, we've got to have consistent, regular conversations, bring industry together, have that conversation with policymakers and keep these issues in the forefront, because the trend lines are pretty clear where things are going. And again, like what's at stake here is our state and our regional economies, not to mention, our individual families' livelihoods and the viability of our communities. So we better stay focused on these things. We've got to keep looking ahead at the horizon.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Well, I'm one where there's ever good news, there's always something you can do to make tomorrow better. So I really like the action plans, the ideas. These are things that we've been hearing, workforce, innovation, legislation. And so thank you very much. I think all of us can take that back to our home shops and put that in. So we've been sitting for a bit. We've had 2 sessions. They have an early lunch out. We are going to take a break. For those of you who are online, we will be back as the agenda states at 11:40, where we'll be talking about a huge topic, and that is one thing of money. Everybody likes money. Money coming into the state, from infrastructure to transportation to the IRA. So thank you all very much. Again, we're taking a break now. We'll be back at 11:40.